For my whole life, I've always had a mild, irrational fear of bees. But this episode features a bee that might make me feel something a little different. Let's get to it, shall we?
Will you stop the clatter, you bubble-headed booby?
The Outer Limits.
Professor Benjamin Fields needs a new assistant for his research when he finds in his garden a young woman lying in the grass. She tells him she is up for the job, and before the professor can hire her, his wife, Francesca, appears, seemingly unbothered by the fact that her husband is about to let a cute young thing in a torpedo bra live and work alongside him for the foreseeable future. I don't see how this could possibly go wrong. Wanting to do at least the bare minimum of due diligence, Ben asks Regina for her references. She dodges the question by crying and telling an obviously made-up story about how her last boss was accused of infidelity with her. Still, she seems to know a lot about bees, which is the professor's field of research, and asks him about whether he'd like to have children. Ben responds by showing her what she'll be working with, a device he uses to communicate with a colony of bees he's given increased intelligence. He then admits that, sometimes, he listens to them mating. When Ben leaves her alone, Regina then uses the device to talk to the colony, revealing that she is, in fact, their queen, who has somehow transformed herself into human form in order to infiltrate the human race, mate with the professor, and help the bees take over the world. She's also incredibly modest.
I have passed the threshold, and I am beautiful.
Later, Regina tries bonding with Francesca by revealing that Ben told her about his desire to have children. Francesca interrogates her about how she found out about the job opening and where she's from. Regina then calls her elderly in order to get invited to an incredibly awkward family dinner, in which they talk about how insects are yucky.
I think we're all a little uneasy about the tiny things that crawl and fly.
Francesca also reveals that she is deathly allergic to bee stings, which I'm sure won't be important later. That night, Francesca spies Regina in the garden doing perfectly normal things like licking flowers and smash dissolving into a giant insect. The next morning, everyone tries to act normal as though it was all just a hallucination. Well, except for Ben, who reassures his wife by being a creep.
I love to watch you brush your hair.
Meanwhile, Regina learns why you shouldn't hold in your gas for too long. She complains to her colony and then passes out. A doctor sees her, and though he explains that her stomach pain is no big deal, he does discover that she's a mutant.
Ben, she's the closest thing to a complete mutant I've ever seen.
Mutant?
However, since the Xavier School hadn't opened yet, nobody really knows what to do with this information. Worried that she's failing her mission, Regina then opts for a more direct approach.
Love me, Ben!
Francesca overhears this and then calmly tells Ben to fire his new assistant. Ben hears a recording of Regina talking to the colony, but dismisses it as unimportant. He even wants to keep her around when she pretends to leave in the morning, sparking an argument between the professor and his wife. As Ben storms off, Regina comes back, gets extra creepy, and then has the colony attack Francesca. I'm sure she just forgot about the older woman's allergy. After the funeral, Regina surprises Ben by showing up in his dead wife's wedding veil before making a proposition.
If I share your grief, then, will you share my joy?
Ben has finally had enough, and confronts the Killer Queen by going all Sam Loomis on her. But, like Michael Myers, Regina survives the fall. This is an interesting episode. I like what it's going for, and Regina is a wild, inhuman femme fatale that makes the whole thing work. The plot unfolds in weird fits and starts, though, and some of the dialogue comes across as overwritten and unnatural.
I heard the thing she screamed. And it was I in the garden.
All in all, though, the sci-fi horror spin on a classic homewrecker story is fun, and the bee motifs keep things interesting. And that's all I have on Zzz. Now, as always, do all those YouTubey things and check out my Patreon. And all that other good stuff. But until next time, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
I like to steal small advantages. Must I wait until tomorrow?